So there's Doug Ford is ridiculous, and he's a liberal, and I wish that there was a provincial party that was actually fighting against him. And I know people say, you know, New Blue and this and that, and I say, okay, when are the rallies? Are they recruiting MPs? How does it look? What is their turnout? Are they having weekly strategy sessions with the executive team? Are they having weekly Zoom meetings? Are they having weekly public Zoom meetings to update their interested electorate? Are they having weekly rallies? No. Then they're not doing the elections in 2026, and they're not doing what they need to do, period. And that's just the basics off the top of my head. Come on, please. Okay. So it's not happening. And I wish that there was some kind of, but it seems like if you get a Wild Rose or a Danielle Smith or a United Conservative Party, invariably you end up infiltrated by communists or globalists or both. And so I don't know, again, tell me in the comments if you've got a way to fight against this. I don't know how to protect a party from that infiltration. So because you can't do it alone, you have to trust people to set up EDAs. You have to trust people to be MPs. You have to or MPPs, excuse me. You have to trust people to do the job that they say they're going to do. And if you put a communist in that position, they're going to push communism because that's all communists do. It's crazy. Rail lockout. Rail lockout is the biggest story in Canada, and well, that's where we've got to start. It is not a strike. They're calling it a strike. It's not a strike. The rail guys were locked out at midnight. They want to work. They offered Canada Rail. They offered both companies, we'll stagger the work stoppage. Like we'll do one and then the other. Like you guys need to deal with this. So we understand it's very, very problematic for all rail to stop. And both companies said no. It's coordinated. It has nothing to do with the workers. It has everything to do with a top-down plan. This is the worst time to do this, and it's the companies locking out the conductors and the workers, and that's really bad. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. We're starting with Ryan Garretson, and we have to look at the rail strike. Excuse me. If I say rail strike, I mean rail lockout. Okay, that's what I mean because it's not a strike. The strike implies it's the union forcing this, and I think that it has much more to do with the employer forcing this. So the rail lockout. Keep this in mind when we talk about the rail lockout, okay? Because it's important, okay? The Ryan Garretson is responding to this headline, Trudeau government's use of Emergencies Act during the Freedom Convoy violated Canadians' charter rights, says a federal court. Justice Richard Mosley wrote that the decision the government made to declare a national emergency was beyond what was called for. So they screwed up, the government screwed up and violated our charter rights. And do you know what happened to the people who did that? Bubkiss. Absolutely nothing happened to them. Ryan says, a reminder for all Canadians, if the government violates your charter rights, nothing will ever come of it. No one will be held accountable or even answer for it. It will be swept under the rug and disappear. That's a big problem in my books. Yes. Yes, the government for the people, by the people seems to be more of a monarchy. A monarchy. I would say a monarchy, right? Pierre Elliott Trudeau, now his son is the king. Prime Minister of Canada. It seems much more like a monarchy than a democracy and the democracy. Do we really want the tyranny of the majority? Because they can magic up a majority with their bought media anytime they want, right? So I'm not seeing it, right? I don't think that our government is what we think it is, but I haven't thought that it is what we thought it was for a while. Anyway, let's talk about the lockout. Son of a Bench says Trudeau gives 1 minute of time in both French and English to address the railway strike in Canada. He refuses to discuss anything else. Then he just walks away. Millions of Canadians, of workers, of farmers, of businesses right across the country are counting on both sides to do the work and get to a resolution. Now, there are checks and balances that I believe have not been done. There are things that need to be continue. There are shipments of chlorine for water treatment, etc. And thanks to the Canada Poly commenter yesterday who mentioned that and saying, like, if this lasts for any real length of time, then water is going to be an issue. I've got some news articles on that about Vancouver worrying about that already. And so these are real concerning issues, and it seems like the government is kind of just saying, well, you know, the system is what the system is, and we have to deal with the system. And in previous times, this would have been managed in a very methodical way. Like I said, there's checks and balances. Before the strike happens, before a lockout happens, they have to have in plan and emergency, I can't remember what it's called, like it's ESA or something like that. But essentially, there are things that need to continue running, like the chlorine trains. There are safety things that need to continue happening. There are a bunch of people who will be mandatory, right? And essential workers. And that has to be agreed upon before they're in a legal position to lock out, right? And it seems like that's not done. It seems like the strike is total, and it seems like people are so worried about it that they're already, and I mean, like, we're in it now, but they're already shutting things down to the degree where, they don't want hazardous materials being stranded on the rails. If you had essential workers, you'd be able to move those hazardous materials, and it seems like we don't have that. And so it seems like these checks and balances that should be in place, that are legally in place, that the Canadian government has outlined, and I think everybody involved would know about this, not done. It seems like it's not done. And so we're in a situation that's going to affect us economically, that's going to affect our food security, that's going to affect the harvest, it's going to affect a whole bunch of people. And the government's saying, we have to trust the system. Bullshit. This would never have happened with previous administrations, because they'd make sure the system worked, and they'd make sure it worked on time, and they'd make sure they didn't have a strike that was so devastating on their hands. And now Justin Trudeau's got it, and it doesn't seem like he's worried. Here's Justin Trudeau. Oops.
Bon, par rapport aux négociations, regarding the rail negotiations, this is an issue that we are following extremely closely and moving forward on in every way we can. The minister was just meeting with the two sides yesterday. He continues to be in Calgary working on this. My message is very straightforward. It is in the best interest of both sides to continue doing the hard work at the table to find a negotiated resolution. Millions of Canadians, of workers, of farmers, of businesses right across the country are counting on both sides to do the work and get to a resolution.
What will it take for the federal government to do something?
What will it take for the federal government to do something? He just walks away. Not even going to respond to that. Just keep walking, Trudeau. Nobody really wants the answer to that question. What will it take? What will it take? Gov.exe says Justin Trudeau says he's watching all of the rail negotiations closely and urges them to come to a deal to save this year's harvest season. But don't be fooled. Nothing would please his WEF masters more than a prolonged strike that would crush farmers and cause soaring food prices. I don't think he's wrong. I don't think he's wrong. It doesn't seem like Justin Trudeau is acting in our best interest. It doesn't seem like anybody's really acting in our best interest. This is the all hands on deck that was last night. This is 7 o'clock p.m. Danielle Smith there, and Steve, who is the Minister of Labor and Seniors, says, we wrapped up meetings in Montreal and Calgary with CN Rail, CPKC, and Teamsters, as well as Danielle Smith, Premier Scott Moe, and Jean Boulet. And he says, workers, farmers, commuters, and businesses can't wait. Canadians need urgency at the table. The parties need to get deals done now. But no deal was done, and I guess they went home, and everybody got locked out. Scott Moe says, just spoke with Federal Labor Minister Steve McKinnon. This is 4:38 p.m. I told him that a rail stoppage will have a devastating effect on the Canadian economy, Canadian jobs, and Canadian consumers. I know he is hearing the same message from many other Canadians. The federal government has tools it can use to end this dispute and ensure there are minimal disruptions of rail service. Saskatchewan is in full support of the federal government using any tools necessary, including binding arbitration. So get them sorted and do it now. Concerned Canadian says Trudeau tells both sides to get back to the table in rail strike. This isn't leadership. This is obfuscation of responsibility. Yeah, this is if there's a disaster looming of this magnitude, the federal government should be fixing it before it gets out of hand. And it's going to get out of hand, and then people are going to call for the federal government to do something, and then they're going to come in and say, "Oh, we're saviors," right? And it's absolutely ridiculous. That's not how you fix this problem. True North is reporting Canada's two largest railways are officially on strike. I don't think that that's accurate. And I'll show you in just a second what I mean. In an unprecedented shutdown, as Canadian National Railway Corporation and Canadian Pacific Kansas City Limited failed to reach an agreement with their employees' union past midnight past the midnight deadline. And here is the article. It says the two railways companies, this is the True North article that they based that tweet on. Okay. The two railway companies locked out 9,300 engineers, conductors, and yard workers as of midnight on Thursday, and the work stoppage is likely to create major supply chain disruptions across Canada, affecting industries like agriculture, mining, forestry, and public health. A source who wished to remain anonymous told True North that the union offered to stagger labor action to both companies, which refused at the same time, which the source alleged to be an act of collusion and union busting. So the tweet said it's a strike, but if the employer locks you out, isn't that a lockout started by the employer? Couldn't the government say to the employer, don't lock out your engineers and yard workers and conductors? Like as a start, right? If you lock them out, we're going to give all of the Canadian whatever contracts to somebody else, and we're going to do that today. Like, aren't there? I know there are tools. There are tools. The government's not using them. Why? Why is True North being misleading in their tweet? Because a lot of people don't even click in. They think they're informed by talking about a rail strike, but it's not a strike. It's a lockout, right? Different. They're different. And so that's notable. Here's CTV News Vancouver. The rail strike could have an impact on Metro Vancouver drinking water, says the headline. And again, thanks to the commenter on the YouTube video, on yesterday's YouTube video, they were talking about this exact thing. They said chlorine is basically a just-in-time shipped commodity. Nobody stores it. Nobody stores enough of it. And if this strike lasts a long period of time, this could be one of the things, boil water advisories and all sorts of issues with water and water treatment could start cropping up. And the first one I found was happening in Vancouver. This is August 19th. And it says, if an agreement can't be reached by Thursday, workers will either walk off the job or be locked out. They're locked out. Metro Vancouver is also working with an alternate sodium hypochlorite supplier to provide smaller loads to maximize chemical storage throughout Metro Vancouver's drinking water treatment and distribution network. So far, he does not, quote, foresee any disruptions to drinking water treatment process due to potential job action. So this is the 19th. Now we're on the 22nd. The 22nd is when the strike started. Excuse me, the lockout. See what I mean? And so on the 19th, well, you know, I'm looking, but I'm only looking till the 21st, and I can't see anything there. So I wonder what he'd say today. Here is Jagmeet Singh. And what do you think Jagmeet Singh will say? Do you think he'll say the safety of our drinking water demands it? The goods and the price of goods demands that we end this strike. No. He says we have to see what the bargaining says. It's exactly what Justin Trudeau says.
I want to send a clear message to Justin Trudeau and the Liberals. We will oppose any attempt of the federal government to intervene on behalf of the employer against the workers in what should be a negotiated agreement between the workers and the employer for good wages and safe work conditions. For too long, we have seen Liberals and Conservatives interfere.
But this isn't the workers walking off the job. This isn't the workers saying this has to happen and we're walking off the job. I don't understand. And in fact, if you know why, can you send me the reason for the employers locking them out? I don't think it was in the article that I've just read. I'm going to go double check because I don't think they gave that color, but we'll find out. So the rail workers have been without a contract since January 1st. So this isn't new. This has been a long time, at least January 1st, right? It could be longer. It could be before that, but regardless, at least 8 months, right? A long time. And so this is the quote. It says, since the beginning, CN has sought a fair deal for employees, consumers, and its customers. Media Relations Director Jonathan A. told True North in an email, we have made 4 offers to the Teamsters, offers that improved safety, increased wages, and provided employees with better schedules and predictability and opportunities to work, offers that would avoid the shutdown of the Canadian economy. Any statement to the contrary is false and intended to mislead from the real issue, the Teamsters' inability or unwillingness to negotiate seriously, he added. However, the president of the Teamsters Canada Rail Conference, Paul Boucher, said that CN was demanding concessions that would have brought employees back to another era regarding safety provisions. Despite reaping billions in profit over the years, CN is demanding concessions that would drag working conditions back to another era. They don't care about supply chains, farmers, or small businesses. Their sole focus is on padding the pocketbooks of their managers and shareholders, with little regard for the safety or well-being of employees, said Boucher. Boucher. Prime Minister Trudeau urged the two parties to come to an agreement without federal intervention. So that's not happened, right? But it doesn't it doesn't anywhere say the rail workers are on strike because of X. It says here, Teamsters Canada argues that it was never its intention to go on strike and that this was a result of both rail companies refusing to offer a safer and more humane industry for employees to work in. Since the outset, rail workers have only ever sought a fair and equitable agreement. Unfortunately, both rail companies are demanding concessions that could tear families apart or jeopardize rail safety. Chris Monet, Director of Public Affairs for Teamsters, told True North, rail workers have fought for a safer and more humane industry for decades, and we will not accept moving backwards. According to Monet, CN is demanding extended workdays in all provinces west of Ontario, as well as implementing a forced relocation scheme which would mandate workers to have to move across the country to fill labor shortages wherever necessary. No, we're not going to do that. You can hire from people there. Are you kidding? So it's like the reason for the strike would be these things. The reason, but it doesn't seem like they wanted to go out on strike, and it seems like the employer's initiating the work stoppage, not the workers. So WTF, man, right? Like it seems really, really odd. Jagmeet Singh is framing this as, you know, these people need to come together and work out a fair deal, et cetera, et cetera. And it's not about what he's saying it's about, right? It's about fair wages and having the Canadian National Rail having the ability to move workers across the country. Jagmeet Singh is out of touch and just spinning bullshit.
In these type of labor disputes to the advantage of the employer, to the detriment of the worker. That is wrong, and we will oppose that. We know that Liberals have done it and Conservatives have done it. You Democrats will always stand on the side of working people to get a fair deal for good wages and for safe work conditions, and that will remain our principle.
Good wages, safe working conditions. That's not the issue. Well, the safe working conditions, I guess, because the employer wants to reduce the safety west of Ontario, but it's not what it's about, right? Trudeau tells union rail companies to solve the issue at bargaining table ahead of massive strike. So he's not done his job, and to disastrous effect. Failure, complete failure in the Canadian government. Here is, let's talk about law in Canada, because the law is absolutely effed in our country. It is not equally applied. It is applied differently depending on who you are. They're trying to bury Tamara Lich and Chris Barber, but they're letting violent criminals out because of equity reasons or overcrowding reasons or time in the trial, like time to trial reasons. So the whole thing is a farce. And I hope that everybody who watches the show is aware that it's a farce. And so do everything you can to not get caught up in the farce, right? Marco says, earlier today I stopped by the Lethbridge Correction Center to pick up a document Chris Carbet had put out for me. It's the document that he was served with last week. Notification that Crown Prosecutors Stephen Johnson, Matthew D., and Aaron R. have requested to appeal the acquittal of conspire to murder police officers. The relief sought is that the acquittal be set aside and a new trial ordered. Grounds for appeal: the trial judge erred in excluding relevant and admissible evidence. 2, the trial judge erred in his instructions to the jury. 3, such further grounds as counsel may advise. I have attached the first 2 pages of the document. I really want everybody to take a look at these pictures. Does anybody see Ottawa or federal Crown prosecutors on these documents? Do you see anything federal at all? If you take a closer look, you will see such titles as Court of Appeal Alberta or Alberta Crown Prosecution Service. The point I'm trying to make is that a lot of folks still like to pin this on Ottawa, specifically Trudeau. I have news for all of you who remain willfully ignorant. Alberta's justice is its own entirely. It has its own courts and crown prosecutors. We even have our own Minister of Justice and Solicitor General of Alberta, Mickey Amery. The Alberta Justice administers justice provincial by the standards set in the Federal Criminal Code. The Criminal Code can be revised by an act of legislation that stems from Parliament. All decisions to prosecute, appeal, etc. in Alberta are within the jurisdiction of the Alberta Crown Prosecutor Service. So while Trudeau will go down in history as Canada's worst Prime Minister, and I definitely won't make any excuses for him, the coutts prosecutions and the travesty of justice we are seeing before our eyes is a provincial affair. We all like to think that Stephen Johnson is buddies with the Prime Minister and keeps him updated daily. Regardless of all the anger, gossip, and speculation, the facts stand that the people who are persecuting Chris Carbet and Tony Olenek are on Alberta's payroll. So this is local, and we shouldn't be blaming blaming Ottawa for these political persecutions. And I think there's something to that. If you're the premier of a province and people get found not guilty by a jury of their peers, and then your province continues to try and prosecute them and keeps them in prison, wouldn't you have something to say? And she's worried about the RCMP coming to see her. I would say back to the RCMP, you better be worried that I'm not going to fire every single one of you because you're acting improperly. These men are innocent as decided by a jury of their peers, and I don't think the Crown has any reason to hold them. And if there is a reason, please explain it to these lovely people right into that camera there. Right? Like, ugh. Anyway, the post-millennial says, exclusive, talking about justice and the failure of justice in Canada. Evidence exonerating Freedom Trucker organizer Tamara Lich is overwhelming. Proves there is no case and no crime, says Tamara's defense attorney. So these are closing arguments, and basically they're saying, like, where's the mischief? Like, what did she do specifically? What crime are you pinning her with? Because we don't like Tamara Lich, so we want to put her in jail for terrorism is not a crime in Canada. Last I heard, anyway. So, but we'll see. We'll see how this whole mischief trial, the longest mischief trial in history, ends, and how much time mischief gets, right? Jeepers creepers. When we compare it to this, Kirk says, in today's episode of Canada's justice system is a joke. Surjit Singh D supposedly lit on fire a fourplex, killing his mother-in-law, and a teenager, and will be on statutory release after spending less than 9 years in prison. He's considered very dangerous with a high risk to reoffend. Surjit has pro-criminal values and will be looking for a job, which he needs a work permit from Canada Border Service Agency because he is on a deportation order and should not even be in the country. So Richmond man convicted of killing 2 gets statutory release, but with conditions. Right? He's required to live in a resident facility due to high risk to reoffend, said the parole board. Oh, that's awesome. I love violent pro-criminals who get let out of our jail system. We don't even need to go after people who say things on the internet that the government doesn't like. We can just release criminals anyway. Whereas England needed to find an excuse to release criminals, Canada just does it as a matter of course. Yay. Here's Ryan, and he's a lawyer. And he says, today I appeared in provincial court and successfully secured a withdrawal of charges in the middle of trial on behalf of a client facing $8,135 in fines for allegedly failing to use the ArriveCan app returning from Europe in September 2022. Here's what happened. My client was charged on September 16th, 2022. This was 2 weeks before the Liberals made ArriveCan voluntary. Instead of the Crown deciding to prosecute these cases, they're still being scheduled, or declining to prosecute these cases, they're still being scheduled for trial. My client ultimately waited a year to be assigned a trial date. After we were retained in February 24, the court adjourned the trial to April. We were prepared to proceed then. The court docket was full with other cases involving ArriveCan, and the court adjourned the trial until June. In June, the trial again did not proceed because the docket was full. The court adjourned the trial to today. To start, we advised of our intention to bring an application under Section 11B of the Charter of Rights as our client's right to a timely trial was violated. The court permitted the Crown to proceed with its case, allowing us to bring our charter application later. The Crown called its only witness, the Public Health Agency of Canada officer who detained our client at Pearson Airport and issued defense notices. The PHAC officer appeared remotely via Zoom. He was wearing a blue surgical mask. After we confirmed that the PHAC officer was alone, we brought an in-trial motion seeking an order that the mask be removed, as, in our view, our client's right to a fair trial was breached. We argued that there'd be no reason for someone alone in a room on Zoom to wear a mask, and that our inability to see facial expressions while testifying, so important during remote trials, undermined our ability to test his credibility and thus our client's defense rights. Separately, I theorized that the PHAC officer was using this mask strategically so that he could not be identified by my client, or as a crutch to make it more comfortable to give evidence. My job when acting as defense counsel is not to ensure a witness's comfort, it's to ensure that I can conduct a fair and vigorous cross-examination. Sometimes that's uncomfortable, but it's my client facing nearly $10,000 in fines, while the public pays the officer to attend. The judge, citing expired requirements to mask indoors in public, held that things are different now, and that she would invite the officer to remove his mask if he wished, but only if he was comfortable. Recall that the officer was on Zoom and confirmed he was alone. As an aside, even in the middle of the pandemic, I never once encountered a witness, lawyer, or judge to wear a mask while appearing remotely from home or the office. The Crown proceeded with its examination of the blue-masked PHAC officer, who had difficulty recalling some important details of the alleged offenses. About 7 minutes into the Crown's examination, the prosecution fell apart and the charges were withdrawn. Had the Crown not halted the prosecution, we would have moved for a directed verdict at the start of the defense case, arguing that the Crown was unable to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that my client did not comply with the federal government's ArriveCAN rules. Ultimately, we did not need to, nor did we need to argue that our client's right to a timely trial was violated. 23 months later, the right result was reached, and our client no longer has to worry about crippling fines, nor about having to take yet another day off work. My client and I felt it was important to share his story and my observations about COVID prosecutions because we believe that the public should be aware that public dollars continue to be flushed down the toilet, pursuing cases about an ArriveCAN law which no longer exists. So people who have been in jail for 9 years, but who are violent and who are likely to reoffend and have pro-criminal thoughts, get those people out of prison. But people who disobey ArriveCAN, or people who didn't do anything but ride a trucker convoy to Ottawa and be the face of a movement, those people need to go to jail, right? Those people need to be made examples of, right? And the coutts guys, they need another trial too, right? Unbelievable stuff. But these violent people, nah, that's fine. Don't even worry about it, right? It's violating your rights to come in here and explain yourself. We're sorry to waste your time, sir. Unbelievable stuff, but it's what's happening. Let's talk about a grab bag of governance, and Rex Glazier highlights what's important in a juxtaposition over the Canadian Prime Minister's Twitter account, which is saying, well, the Twitter account says, from local boutiques to family-run cafes, small businesses are the heart of our communities and the backbone of our economy. Today, Prime Minister Trudeau stopped by some of the vibrant small businesses of Lockout, Quebec, to support the local entrepreneurs. And I mean, a quote of Justin Trudeau's before he was elected, he says, we have to know that a large percentage of small businesses are actually just ways for wealthier Canadians to save on their taxes, and we want to reward the people who are actually creating jobs and contributing in concrete ways. And the other aspect of this is we have Chinese traders in our government, and the Prime Minister focusing on going to support small businesses that he doesn't actually support is kind of a bullshit dodge to treason, right? Ongoing treason in the government that's being looked past because it benefits Justin Trudeau. Wah, wah, right? Awful. And 4T, Strong and Free, says, inflation is down. When's the party? This is near Trudeau's riding, the tent cities and trash in Canada. This is not what the country used to look like, right? Tent cities with garbage out front. This is not how people used to live in this country. And this is a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace. And I mean, can you... Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.